It's high season for professional cycling and high time for us to examine the business of cycling on Beyond the Medals.
Rio, we could come away with more than one medal, potentially.
Todd Gogulski joins us for a look at the state of the sport, the obstacles, and the opportunities.
I think it's great to have a fresh person leading the national governing body.
And a leading team official talks frankly about cycling's biggest challenge. What should the sport do about doping?
The sponsors, they'll take guaranteed 10 wins, no doping scandals, over 50 wins, and you never know.
It's all coming up on this special cycling edition of Beyond the Medals. Hello, I'm Rick Horrow, and welcome to Beyond the Medals. Each month, we explore the business side of an Olympic sport. On this edition of the program, we turn the spotlight onto cycling. And the timing is perfect. In August and September, the world's best road racers compete in several of the sport's most prestigious events. In August, thousands of racing fans turned out in Colorado to cheer many of the U.S. top riders in the USA Pro Challenge. Other elite pros headed to Spain in the grueling three-week Vuelta a España. September's European schedule continues with the 8-stage Tour of Britain, and then attention turns back to the United States when the UCI World Road Championships takes place in Richmond, Virginia. Keeping an eye on all the cycling action for Universal Sports, Todd Gogulski. He joins me now to talk about the state of USA cycling. Gogo, a big change for the program this summer, a new leader, former professional cyclist Derek Bouchard-Hall. And before we discuss his role as CEO, what do you think the importance is to have a former elite rider now at the helm of a national governing body?
I think it's great to have Derek Bouchard-Hall come in because he started out as a collegiate racer and worked his way up through the amateur ranks to becoming a professional later in life. Along the way, also raced in the Olympic Games. So he understands everything that the membership is going through. And cycling's a fairly unusual sport. There's not a lot of structure in school to get you through to teach you the sport.
But what business acumen does he have to do the job?
He's a smart guy. He's got 3 degrees from very prestigious universities, and he's served as a consultant in business as well as running cycling and outdoors organization as one of the chief people running that organization over in the UK. He left that job to come to USA Cycling, and that's because of his passion for the sport, not for the money.
And it's all about, when you're a leader, juggling priorities. What do you think his prioritization should be for USA Cycling?
He's got a lot on his plate, but if I were to break it down, I would say, first of all, he wants to grow the membership and grow women's cycling. And so that's a big one. You can never do enough of that in this sport. We have a giant country and a very small percentage of the population actually participates as racers. So let's try and make that a bigger number so we have a bigger pool. He also needs to think about attracting more sponsorship to the sport in terms of for teams. And that way, the riders that get into the sport, they have a platform with which to race. If you can't make any money as a bike racer, you're not going to race your bike. So especially for the women's side, they don't have a lot of money. Women come in, they cycle out. It's hard to make a living. You don't get that long-term development. So sponsorship would be a big one as well. I'm going to go with number 3. I think it's great to have a fresh person leading the national governing body because the sport has gone through some tough times with some scandals. People, both the membership of the national governing body, USA Cycling, and the general population, they want to see a fresh face. They want somebody with new ideas to come in and say, okay, we're trying to do things differently, and we mean business, and we got somebody new at the helm.
Good summary, Gogo. Awareness, sponsorship, and perspective, 3 very important issues. Women's sports, you talked about it earlier, women's cycling specifically, a lot of issues there. What's the state of women's cycling in your opinion?
Women's cycling is getting better over the last few years. There are more sponsors, and you're hearing me say that again, because sponsorship is what drives the sport. You can't race your bike around the world with a lot of moving pieces unless you have a lot of money behind your team that can foot the bill for all that and pay the riders a salary to live. So sponsorship is critical to the sport of cycling for the women, just like it is for the guys. They don't have as much money in their side. They need more. That will raise the level of competition. It will make the racing more exciting. We'll get to build these personalities over years and years that people will get to know. That will all snowball, more television coverage, and then everything takes off from there.
And it's all about building as well. We now have Rio less than a year away. Deploy that master crystal ball you've got. And tell me if you think there are any road racers in the American stable that could contend for a medal in Rio.
Definitely on the women's side. American women are perennial medal contenders in the Olympics and at the Worlds. In the time trial in particular in Rio, we could come away with more than one medal, potentially. For sure, we'll have somebody on the medal steps. In the road race, it's a little bit tougher to predict. Road racing at the Olympics is very unusual because riders are riding for their national team instead of their normal trade team. So people who have competed against each other all year are now riding for their country, and they don't maybe know each other as well, but they still have a shot in the road race. For the men, tougher. The Olympic TT rests a lot on Taylor Phinney. He's coming back from an injury. He started racing this year after being out for over a year. He's been on the podium at the Worlds before. He was 4th in the Olympic at London in the Olympic TT. So if he can continue to get better, he might have a shot. Road race for the guys, it's a bit of a roll of the dice for them.
We have much more to discuss with Todd Gogolski, starting with dollars and cents. How did top racers come up with the cash to compete? Later, serious talk on doping from the leader of a cycling team that's pledged to stay clean.
You take steps to, whoa, to tell the guys, slow down.
More on coping with sport's biggest challenge. That's all straight ahead on Beyond the Medals. Taylor Phinney is one of American cycling's feel-good stories. Coming back from a devastating crash last year, he recovered to take the Stage 1 win at this summer's USA Pro Challenge. He'll race for Team USA at the upcoming UCI Road World Championships in Richmond. And our friends at MVP Index tell us Phinney is succeeding in social media as well. He's steadily added Twitter followers over the last 6 months, while his Instagram following has made an even sharper climb, from just about 35,000 in March to more than 55,000 today. Back with Todd Gogolski, Universal Sports Network cycling analyst. Gogo, Taylor Phinney, a great example of why cycling's so popular. Perseverance, work ethic, off the charts. But the nuts and bolts is really important in all of this. How does a pro rider like Phinney support himself financially?
Well, for most of the season, he rides for his trade team, which is BMC. They pay him a hefty salary because he's a great bike racer, and they take care of all the other things behind the scenes. He's got masseuses that look after him. They've got mechanics. They have a massive stable of vehicles because they're racing around the world. So that's how he makes his money. It's a salary, just like any pro athlete gets a salary. Instead of it being necessarily a separate sponsor from his team, it's actually through the team.
One of the more interesting teams to watch in 2015 has been Cannondale-Garmin, which just formed a merger of two powerful racing brands. Earlier this summer, Gogo sat down with Team CEO Jonathan Vaughters, who explained why the reorganization was financially necessary.
The World Tour and the Tour de France team, since I've been involved starting in 2008, the budgets have gone up at a really high rate. It's a very, very inflationary environment. We raced the 2008 Tour de France on a $10 million a year budget as one of the smaller teams at that point in time, but maybe the biggest team in the race at that point in time was 20 or thereabouts US dollars. Now the biggest teams in the world are 40. Maybe even a little over 40. Not many people know that. I see a lot of stuff published that shows much lower figures, but the fact of the matter is the biggest teams in the world are around 40 million US. And neither Cannondale on their own or our organization on its own could afford something of that magnitude. I mean, we still can't afford 40, but at least we can afford, half of that. And so in order to remain in the World Tour, to be remotely competitive with the big money teams like Sky, we needed to basically come together with a like-minded partner and build the team that way.
How did you identify the Cannondale team, and how did they identify you with the Garmin team to say, okay, we both need to change this and get in together to make this work?
Well, we were actively sort of looking for someone who could mesh with our mindset on the team. And I think they had actually been actively looking for a partner to merge with. Originally, they were talking to Tinkoff a little bit about merging up with him. They were looking for a team to merge up with. Their experience broadly with a lot of teams was, a lot of ego, a lot of disorganization, a lot of behavior that wouldn't be characterized as sort of professional in the business world. Cannondale is a very business-focused company. It's owned by a private equity group. It is not a fly-by-night bike company in any way, shape, or form. They are solid, correct, truthful, honest, ethical people that are running, a business in a focused way. And I think they wanted a team that they felt like, okay, we can structure this like a business. We can have a board of directors. We can have people that are going to understand why, decisions aren't just made unilaterally by the director at any whim or motion, that, that we're going to have a say in the decision-making process. And so we just sort of discovered each other and found, oh, okay, we can get along well with these people. And they thought, well, we can get along with these guys. And yeah, that's it.
So what kind of a budget did you guys end up with for this year?
Our budget is a little shy of 20 million US a year.
Okay, so wow.
But that's still actually, I can show you a little chart. We're still in the bottom quarter of World Tour teams in terms of raw budget.
The Cannondale Garmin team has been famous for its anti-doping stance, a commitment to being completely clean. They've recently discovered that's easier said than done. When we come back, GoGo goes deep with Jonathan Vaughters on cycling and doping and why it's so critical to clean up the sport. While cycling has experienced plenty of positive growth in the last decade, the biggest negative the sport has faced is doping. Scandals involving Lance Armstrong, Floyd Landis, and others have damaged cycling's image, but USOC CEO Scott Blackman says that acknowledging the problem will be the first step in solving it.
Doping is a reality in sport. I wish it wasn't. And the Lance Armstrong situation, I think, has caused us to shine a brighter light on the fact that doping does exist. So at the end of the day, I think the Lance Armstrong situation is going to be a positive thing, not a negative thing.
We're back with Universal Sports Network cycling analyst Todd Gogolski. Gogo, it's no secret that cycling's undergone some credibility issues with some major scandals. Can that be fixed, and how can it be fixed?
Well, it's not easy. First of all, Derek Bouchard-Hall coming in as a new leader of the national governing body for the U.S., it's a nice step, but sports are a messy business. There are a lot of sports that have had a lot of black eyes recently, and I do think that he is a fresh person to do it with a fresh perspective and a zero-tolerance approach. So that's a good thing. The sport's working very hard to clean itself up, and having somebody new at the helm of the USA Cycling body, I think, is very important.
Let's go back to Gogo's interview with the CEO of Cannondale Garmin team, Jonathan Vaughters. He's a former teammate of Lance Armstrong's who's admitted to doping during his career, and he's taken a strong stance against the practice as an executive. He told Gogo how he persuades riders to stay clean.
Well, the first step is basically having the riders understand that they're not in this alone, that even though, sure, winning a bunch of races is going to get you a bigger contract, increase your value, are you willing to sacrifice or risk the jobs of over 100 people because of your own greed? And that's one of the first things we do at our November orientation camp is I have everyone sit in a room and I say, hey, okay, everybody, I'd like everyone to get to know each other. So talk to the guy next to you, ask him about his family, ask him, did he get a new car? How's his baby? How's his mom? Okay, now talk to the next guy next to you. And I kind of just get them talking, and then they're starting to learn, you like Camaros too, or whatever. And about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, once everyone's getting really kind of comfortable with the situation, I stop everyone very loudly and I say, okay, now, those people that you just met, look to your left, look to your right. Great that you met us one, you're a mechanic, a teammate. Look at all these people. Realize, if you're the person that decides to dope on this team, I said, you know, maybe there's other teams out there that have this margin of error that they can have one guy go positive or two guys go positive or whatever, one guy get caught up in a scandal and their sponsors are okay with that. I'm like, on this team, if you decide to go down that road, the person you just talked to is going to lose their job instantly. The other people are going to lose their homes, their mortgages, you know, their families are going to be in trouble. Are you willing to do that? Or do you want to basically, you know, really put 100 people in a hard spot? Is that okay in your head? And the way I see it is that the athletes that we tend to bring onto the team are generally good people, and they don't want that on their conscience. Is that worth an extra, you know, $500,000 to them? No, it's not. Now, of course, you know, if I run across some complete sociopath, maybe that falls apart. But for most people that have any genuine conscience, they realize, whoa, okay, I have a big responsibility here, not just to myself, but all the people around me.
I think probably almost nobody realizes outside of your immediate world that there are 100 people on payroll for your team. You've got 29, 28 riders and 70 staff.
Yeah. I mean, everything, chiropractors to bus drivers, truck drivers, bike mechanics, obviously the medical staff, physiotherapists, directors. I mean, yeah.
It's a huge group. So how do you, in addition to having them meet their neighbors and their teammates and everybody else, how else do you know for yourself that they're not doping? How can you quantify it?
Well, you know, I mean, honestly, it takes one to know one. We do two basic things. One, with, you know, a current World Tour rider, we look at their blood records, the biopassport records. We don't look at it with software like the UCI does, trying to statistically determine whether or not they doped or not. We look at it from the perspective of, you know, medical doctors and hematologists that are in that field. And then, quite frankly, myself, who had a very keen interest in you know, in that world, and has seen quite a few dope profiles in my life, my own included, and I, quite frankly, just know what to look for. And it's so between the medical expertise and a little bit of just, you know, dirty, greasy knowledge from the dark side, we come up with a basic policy of, you know, we just don't hire guys that don't meet our requirements, meet our thresholds as far as that goes.
You've admitted that you made some bad choices in your career in regards to doping, and now you're running this team where it's really important to you to have a very clean, very ethical team. Is there really stuff that you could have learned as a rider and with riders around you who were doping that can help you spot it easier now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's you just sort of learn to recognize it. So yeah, it's you know, to be specific about it, I mean, I don't know that I could, and even if I could, I don't think I'd actually, you know, say it on TV. But yeah, I mean, you sort of you can even see when a rider is starting to think down those lines, like that they're, you know, they're struggling, and they, you know, and you start to understand. Okay, I remember when I was in that place, and you know, 2 months later, that's when things went a little sideways for me. And so that you know, and you take steps to, whoa, you know, to tell the guys, slow down. Like, you know, we understand you're under stress. Let's try to, you know, build a plan out of this. Maybe take a couple weeks off from racing. Let's try to, you know, rebuild you in a better way. You know, we don't pick guys that don't have great engines. So, you know, if they're going down the path of doping, it's you know, they shouldn't be there because they've got the talent to do it without it. And, you know, the racing environment nowadays is such that you can do it without it. And you know, end of the day, you know, people say, well, yeah, but you might not win as much as if, you know, you did dope. Well, I don't care. Neither do our sponsors care. If you get, you know, 10 wins a year as opposed to 50 wins a year, but the sponsor is guaranteed no doping scandals at 10, they'll take guaranteed 10 wins, no doping scandals over 50 wins, and ooh, you never know. Every day of the week, every day of the week. I'm not saying, you know, every sponsor out there is like that, but responsible, commercially oriented, you know, ethical sponsors like Cannondale and Garmin Absolutely, they provide this. So it's like, guys, can we win 10 races a year clean? Yeah. Are you talented enough to do, to win 10 races a year? Yeah. So let's shoot for that. Let's not worry about what's going on around or what's not going on around.
Well, fascinating stuff, Gogo, but since you recorded that interview with Cannondale Garmin team member Tom Danielson's been suspended for failing a doping test, what does that say about the state of that movement?
Well, you can't control everything. There are a lot of moving parts. Vaughters has a really great way that he tries to keep all his guys motivated by the same things he's motivated by. But sometimes people fall off the track and they go the wrong way, and unfortunately it looks like that's what happened with Tom Danielson. He hasn't been suspended yet because they still have a process of adjudication, but it doesn't look good.
Gogo, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you at the Worlds in Richmond.
Looking forward to it, and always a pleasure talking cycling with you.
We'll be back in a minute as Beyond the Medals rolls on. The best cyclists in the world descend on Richmond, Virginia for the 2015 UCI Road Cycling World Championships. The cobbles and climbs take center stage as riders will battle the tight roads and historic streets as they fight for the rainbow jersey. And you can catch all the action from September 20th to the 27th right here on Universal Sports. That wraps up this edition of Beyond the Medals. Hope you've enjoyed our look into the business of cycling. Our thanks to Todd Gogulski for joining us, and thank you for watching. Remember to visit universalsports.com for more cycling news and highlights, as well as more video from our program. We'll be back next month with more insight into the business of sport. Thanks for watching. I'm Rick Horrow. See you next time.